Hi, I'm Stephanie Vasko, and I'm the Managing Director for the Michigan State University Center for Interdisciplinarity. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about facilitation. And I'm going to focus specifically on facilitation for virtual meetings. In the COVID-19 world in which we live, virtual meetings are now a necessity of our everyday lives. And so what I wanted to do was just give you a few tips and tricks for facilitating virtual meetings, and then for thinking about ways that you might take that facilitation of virtual meetings into some online spaces as well. So when I think about facilitating meetings, I think that there are three parts that you need to consider: the before meeting, the during the meeting, and after the meeting. For the before meeting, I like to think about a few different factors. So first is setting expectations. And when I talk about setting expectations, I mean that you want to set expectations not only for yourself as the facilitator, but also for the people who are going to be attending your meeting or your event. And so things to do to set expectations include creating an agenda that has the topics you'll be talking about, how long you'll be talking about them, potentially some defined roles. So who's going to facilitate the meeting, who might be taking notes, who might be leading certain parts of the discussion. All of those are nice things to make sure that you have on an agenda. I also like to make sure to have a backup link to whatever meeting I have on the agenda and in an email that I send out, so that information is available in different places. If your community has a code of conduct, that is something to also make sure goes out before the agenda, or with the agenda and before the meeting, especially if there are going to be people who are attending your meeting or event that haven't seen this code of conduct before. You just want to make sure that everyone knows the expectations of participating in your community and coming to your community or event. When communicating before a meeting about expectations about cameras, you want to be able to let people know that having your camera on or off is fine. It is important to understand that not everyone lives in a space where they're able to have camera on for a virtual meeting. So there may be a variety of factors that come into play here, and making sure that people who don't have the opportunity or can't participate in that modality feel supported to be part of the meeting as well is important in setting the expectations for the meeting. You want to communicate these expectations, so please do make sure that if you're sending out an agenda, that the agenda goes out ahead of time so people have time to digest, read it, maybe ask any questions if they might have questions, invite questions if that's something that you are willing to engage with before the meeting. If there might be changes to the agenda, you might be amenable with. And then also just making sure that everyone has the information, reminding people about the information. It's easy for things to get lost in the deluge of emails that we receive every day. So sending out additional reminders is always key. Creating your space right before the meeting as a facilitator is extremely important as well. So you'll notice there's no distractions in my background. We've got some good lighting going on. I'm sitting in a comfortable chair at a height that's good for the camera if I'm keeping my camera on. My audio quality is good. If it was darker in here, I might use a ring light. If I was having problems with my audio, I might use an external microphone as well, or an external camera. Because as a facilitator, you might be doing a lot of talking. You want to make sure that you've got some of your creature comforts around. So I've got water here off to the side. You want to make sure that all of your tabs with distractions are closed, anything that might have alerts. If you use Teams, that those alerts get turned off. If you've got, we've all got rectangular devices next to us too, making sure those are muted and silenced will help you create a space where you can focus on actively listening to and facilitating the meeting or event that you're running. During a meeting, one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of the meeting is have a slide that I put up that hangs out in the background, especially if you're using Zoom. It's very easy to just share a screen. And then having people change their names to their names and their preferred pronouns. So we like to make that an expectation that we know people's preferred pronouns and that everyone in the room can see them and then use them as well. Some groups like to use icebreakers. Icebreakers, to me as a facilitator, can be a little contentious. So you really want to know your group before you choose the icebreaker for the group, if an icebreaker is a way that you choose to go. Some groups love to engage with them. Some groups find them very off-putting. And so making sure you understand your group and the needs of your group will be important in choosing how to start the meeting off. So something maybe just like introductions in a sentence about yourself, or 3 words about your research, are ways to kind of get that icebreaker modality in, but maybe not use some of the icebreakers that people might find off-putting in facilitating meetings. You as a facilitator are going to want to keep things moving and keep things on schedule. So there are always two things that can happen to derail this. What if someone's talking too much? Or what if someone's not talking enough or no one's talking and there's just dead air and you feel the need to fill that? So in the case of someone talking too much, there are a few strategies that you can try. The first strategy is wedging. So in wedging, as somebody who's dominating the airtime continues to speak, you might get in there and you might pivot the conversation. So someone is talking at length about something and you see an opportunity to come in and say, you know what, that's really interesting. Why don't we put that in a parking lot, a place where we can revisit ideas, or that's a really interesting idea. How do other people in the room feel about it? Just to kind of stop that maybe monologue and then redirect it someplace else. And you might have individuals who want to come back to that and say, well, I'm not done with my thought. And we can always say something like, we can save time at the end of the meeting. And we can always say, we want to hear from everyone in the room. And this is a place where offering different modalities for contributions during a meeting is also very important. So some people might not be comfortable typing out responses or filling out a form or talking during a meeting with the video on or camera on or with the phone. So what I like to do in this case is have both the ability to contribute real time in video, usually in the chat, but I also will have a Google document where people can type thoughts, reactions, and then we capture that as well. So that kind of also solves that problem of what if someone isn't participating. So trying to make space during the meeting is also important. At the end, you might save 5 minutes and say something to the effect of, hey, we've reserved this last 5 minutes for people who maybe haven't had as much of a chance to speak during this meeting. And then you give them the opportunity to do that. But if you also have an additional modality for contributions, then that's a place where they might be able to sit and reflect on what they thought about the meeting, if that's their mode of contributing, and then contribute it to the document. The other thing I really want to stress about during a meeting is the idea of making your meeting accessible. So if you are using a video chat program that allows a third-party API that will do auto transcriptioning, if you can use a live transcriptioner, these are really good ways of being able to provide a meeting for people so that we're capturing additional audiences. Making sure that if you're using slides, that you're using good contrast in the slides, that you're following some of the best practices in accessibility, that maybe you're not using animations. If you're using images, that you have descriptions of the images as well. So really taking into account the different audiences that could be listening to or participating in your meeting, and making sure that the meeting is accessible for all of those audiences. After a meeting, you want to follow up with people who've attended your meeting. So if you've had someone who took notes during your meeting, or if you as a facilitator took notes, it's always nice to be able to clean those up and send them out. And it's especially nice to send them out with maybe some next steps. So thinking in the construction of your agenda about ways that you might be able to think about deliverables or next steps or goals is a good way to be able to then kind of come back after that meeting and make sure everyone knows or sees that their contributions were heard. And that they're being sent out to the group, and that people have time to process the ideas and thoughts that happened within your meeting. So these were just a few tips and tricks about creating and facilitating online meetings and events. If you're interested in different tools you can use or how online and in-person events differ, please feel free to reach out to me, and I am more than happy to provide you with resources on a variety of these different topics.